This is a very, very exciting episode because I get the pleasure to actually do a Skype call with the author of international bestseller, Dr. Michael Greger. And we're going to pretty much talk about how not to die. So I only got about 30 minutes with him, but I'm going to make it count and hopefully give you guys value and continue to spread the knowledge on why eating plant-based can literally solve a lot of problems. So without further ado, everybody please help me welcome Dr. Michael Greger.
You're just funny. It's funny, the way you tell the story and everything.
Funny how?
Come here, though. Yeah, he's crazy, see? Who are you?
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
Are you ready?
Hey,
Good morning, Doctor.
good morning. How you doing?
Oh, I am very well, sir. How are you?
Good, thanks. How's the sound?
I think it's pretty good.
All right, great.
Yes, sir. So, am I to believe that you are on a treadmill right now, sir?
Of course.
I love that.
Time management.
That is fantastic. Well, first, thank you so much for the time today. I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate it.
Sure, happy to help out. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too, sir. And I must say, I am a big fan. I appreciate it. And for people that maybe don't know about your background or things you've done, if you could kind of tell a quick little story and then maybe the reason why you got into medicine, I love to hear that story.
What really drew me into medicine in the first place is actually my grandmother. I was just a kid when my grandma was diagnosed with end-stage heart disease and sent home to die. She already had so many bypass operations, she basically run out of plumbing at some point. Confined to a wheelchair, crushing chest pain. Her life was over at age 65. But then she heard about this guy, Nathan Pritikin, one of our early lifestyle medicine pioneers. And what happened next is actually detailed in Pritikin's biography. It talks about Frances Greger, my grandmother. They wheeled her in, and she walked out. She was given a medical death sentence at age 65, but thanks to a healthy diet, was able to enjoy another 31 years on this planet till age 96 to continue to enjoy her 6 grandkids, including me. That's why I went into medicine. That's why I started nutritionfacts.org. That's why I wrote the book, How Not to Die. That's why the proceeds of all my books all goes to charity. I just want to do for your family what Pritikin did for my family.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, and to think it literally took, how long before she switched up her diet to where she was starting to see
3 weeks.
3 weeks. God,
3 weeks.
that's something.
And so the structure of one's arteries don't actually open that fast, but the function can so rapidly improve. You get an improvement in angina, this crushing chest pain within weeks. So opening up arteries without drugs, without surgery, only one diet has ever been proven to do that, and that's a diet centered around whole plant foods.
Unbelievable. And that's a big reason why I not only picked up your book a while ago, but I've really done my research. I was about 4 years ago diagnosed with a rare case of Crohn's disease. And and I wasn't showing all the correct symptoms that they normally see where they say, for sure, this is Crohn's. They weren't really sure. So, of course, they about 4 or 5 years ago threw me on a bunch of medicine and trial and error, and I was still having issues. And I decided to take it upon myself about 2.5, 3 years ago to start just eliminating things out of my diet. So I would, stop red meat, and then I would stop sushi, which was really hard for me because I'm a big sushi nut. So I'd stop raw fish, and then eventually over a course of a year, I realized that the only way I wasn't having episodes was when I was going 100% plant-based or vegan. So in about 18 months, well, probably almost 2 years into it now, and I'm off my medication, and
Amazing.
I haven't had any symptoms. So
that's fantastic to hear. No, and in fact, what your personal experience is what's backed up by the medical literature the most effective intervention in terms of relapse prevention. It was a Japanese research group was putting people on a plant-based diet. And so I believe 2 years out, I have a video on it, 2 years out, 80% prevented from relapse, no drug, no surgical intervention, nothing's been shown to do that. You know, same thing with multiple sclerosis, most powerful intervention ever, plant-based diet. So a lot of these autoimmune conditions, no surprise, these are inflammatory conditions. So put people on an anti-inflammatory diet, a diet of plant foods, well then, no surprise, things may get better.
Yeah, and is there any, I'm sure there's studies all over the place, but is there anything concrete that says for sure this is the type of food, or is it things we're putting in the American diet that's causing these inflammatory issues? I mean, what from your experiences?
Oh, right. Well, so there was a study in Australia, for example, that looked at kind of conventional meat, what we might get off the store shelves here. Well, there's Australia, so they were looking at kangaroo meat, which is kind of like the venison of Australia. So they're looking at kind of wild-caught meat versus kind of the conventional kind of factory farm meat, and found that the kangaroo meat did actually cause less inflammation. When you eat pro-inflammatory foods like meat, you get this bump in inflammatory markers literally within hours of consumption. But the rise in inflammation was actually lower with the kangaroo meat. Now you could say, okay, great, step in the right direction, but why eat foods that are pro-inflammatory at all? Whereas you feed people plant foods, well, then you have an anti-inflammatory effect. Your markers of systemic inflammation go down. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that would be a preference. But if you are going to eat meat, then kind of wild game is probably the least harmful.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot too, and I always have this debate with my buddies that I continue to try to convert to just, eating a little less meat, kind of like I did at first.
Yeah,
to go cold turkey is tough, but aside from being good for the environment, it's just good for our bodies. And I mean, do you think maybe, is it fair to say in the past 50 years, the way we farm animals and the type of maybe hormones we put into these animals, is that affecting us long term? Is that the reason why these diseases are popping up, or do you think it's just bound to happen either way with eating animal products?
Well, probably the biggest difference is over the last really century or so, a prime motivator of animal agribusiness has been to increase the carcass fat content. And so, for example, you go back late 1800s, a chicken, according to the USDA, was about 2% fat by weight, about 20% protein. Now, a century later, there's 10 times more fat, over 20%. In fact, there's more fat than protein in chicken these days. And this was a genetic manipulation through selective breeding to make these, to make these really fatty. Now that's for in terms of like juiciness. But that's what the consumers are craving. But unfortunately, what that does is increases saturated fat content. In fact, there's more saturated fat in some chicken than in some cuts of beef.
And is that because of the hormones there?
Well, no. So and the consequence of this movement towards greater carcass fat content increases what's called arachidonic acid. It's a pro-inflammatory long-chain omega-6 fatty acid found now predominantly chicken and eggs in the American diet. And so that's why, studies, if you just remove, chicken, eggs, other meat from people's diet, you get a significant improvement in mood, for example, within 2 weeks. In a randomized control trial, the only diet ever shown to do that. We think what's going on, we're speculating, but we think it's this neural inflammation, this brain inflammation caused by the arachidonic acid, this preformed inflammatory long-chain omega-6 fatty acid found predominantly in chicken and eggs, that's increasing brain inflammation, impairing people's mood. And so that's one of the reasons why kind of typical conventional meat may be more inflammatory than perhaps it used to be. But why not just eat anti-inflammatory foods?
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is foods as grown.
Yeah, and that's it's so interesting because sometimes when I continue to debate with my friends, and because I used to be a personal trainer, so the fact that I'm even on plant-based, they're just shocked. and they always get the question, and I have my answer, but I'd love to hear it from a professional.
Sure.
I always get asked, where do you get your protein from?
Right.
I'm sure this is not the first time you've heard this, obviously.
Right. Yeah, no, anyone who doesn't know how to get protein on a plant-based diet doesn't know beans. Right, legumes, beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils. Those are the plant protein superstars. And so what they have are all the things you'd expect in other kind of typical high-protein foods. They got the protein, iron, zinc, and while missing out the things you don't want, like saturated fat and hormones and trans fats, cholesterol, etc., while also having all these nutrients of concern from the plant kingdom, right? So that's where the folate, potassium, things, fiber, that we're deficient in. So really the best of both worlds. When we get protein in plant foods, they're packaged with these nutrients we're not getting enough of without things that we're concerned about. So it's really the best way to get our protein. Yeah, I mean that's kind of the simplest answer. So my kind of daily dozen checklist of all the healthiest of healthy foods I encourage people to fit in their daily diet. I encourage 3 servings of legumes a day. And so that could be, typical like black beans, pinto beans, or like hummus or tempeh or all sorts of good ways to get some good food in people's diets.
Yeah, now I think I haven't dove a whole lot into it, but did you just come out with a cookbook, or has it been out for a while?
Oh yeah, no, cookbook came out. Very excited about it. Got to number 3 on the New York Times bestseller list. New York Times review book called it one of their favorite cookbooks of the season. Very cool. Yeah, no, so I didn't want to just be kind of a reference book, right? I mean, How Not to Die, 15 chapters, 15 leading causes of death, like 3,000 citations. But I wanted to be kind of a practical guide. I'm making these kind of day-to-day grocery store decisions. So I want to make some, here's how you can have, here's how you can cook without salt, sugar, how you make something sweet without sugar, salty without salt, cooking without added fat, etc.
Right. And the one thing I notice, especially going vegan, is just with doing very little seasoning at all, just combining the certain amount of vegetables and the different types of vegetables along with, beans and fiber, it's very flavorful. I mean, people don't think that vegetables are flavorful, but once you cook them and saute them and put them together, there's some great meals out there that you can make.
Oh, well, part of it is probably your palate has so changed. I mean, so once you start moving to real food, once you start getting away from, the processed food industry has deadened our taste buds, deadened our palate with these hyper sweet, hyper salty, hyper fatty foods. Once you start eating normal foods, then good, healthy food actually tastes better. So the classic studies were done with salt reduction. So you have people salt soup to taste, and then put them on a low-salt diet, and within weeks, they actually prefer less salt. The salt they originally liked is actually too salty. They actually prefer lower-salt foods. Totally. And you can do the same thing with cutting sugar out of one diet, and then all of a sudden, whereas now, the ripest peach in the world would taste sour after a bowl of Fruit Loops, right?
Totally.
But all of a sudden, so people look at me eating like a, sweet potato or something with a little cinnamon on it, and they're like, well, that's awesome, you can eat like that. But they look at me like I'm some aesthetic monk or something, but they don't realize, no, I've got the best of both worlds. It actually tastes good to me, like really good to me.
Oh, yeah.
Or just eating like corn on the cob, even without the butter or the salt. Once your taste buds have been readjusted, all of a sudden it actually tastes delicious. So then you don't have the sacrifice. So it's like, wow, it tastes great, and you get to live longer. That's what plant-based eating is all about.
And little do you know that inside, your body is just working to heal all the stuff and the crap that we've destroyed in the past 20, 30 years.
And it's been wanting to heal all along, but you keep stabbing it with a fork 3 times a day.
Right. And it has no idea what these are either. We're throwing in things that, we can't even pronounce some of the names of the ingredients, this artificial stuff. So it's probably trying to fight that off as well. Speaking of which, I did want to ask you, because now the vegan trend is starting to be, I'm afraid it's going to be one of those trends, like the paleo and the keto diets and all that. But now I'm starting to notice a lot of the vegan stuff is starting to go a little bit more artificial. So I want to get your opinion on those, vegan burgers that you get in frozen food section.
Yeah, sure.
If someone is maybe enticed to buy that, of course, it might be better than meat in your opinion, or is it just better to make your own at home? Like, what's your feelings on all that stuff?
Well, I mean, it's absolutely better, right? So, I mean, I think these are really valuable kind of stepping stone foods. So not everyone can go from, cheeseburgers and milkshakes to, kale and quinoa, right? I mean, it's this transition. And so what these products offer is like all your favorite childhood flavors and textures, and like you can basically get everything in kind of plant-based form now. Of course, they're processed, they have added salt, they typically have added sugar, but oh my God, it's certainly better. Zero cholesterol. You don't have to worry about, the food safety risks. I mean, so yeah, absolutely better. I just don't want people to stall there. It's a stepping stone towards a healthier diet, a transition food.
Yeah.
I encourage people to keep moving along that spectrum and ideally end up with a diet centered around whole plant foods, unprocessed plant foods. That's really the safest way to go, the healthiest way to go. But hey, I mean, I think it's great that soon you can walk into like any Burger King, and they're advertising like 100% Whopper, 0% beef. Like wow, what kind of world are we in right now? But but I think the kind of alarm bells going off in your head are right. Like the processed food industry will be happy to give you low carb junk food, low fat junk food. They'll give you snack wells. They'll give you vegan junk food. They'll give you paleo junk food. It's kind of ironic, right? But because they can't make money off of real food, where real food goes bad.
Yeah.
Right, produce rots. I mean, you can't brand it. You need something, like a Twinkie that sits on the shelf for a few weeks. That's where the money is. Dirt cheap ingredients, subsidized by the American taxpayers. We subsidize the sugar industry and stuff. And so, the CEO of Coca-Cola isn't sitting around thinking how to make, give American kids diabetes. They're sitting around thinking, how do we make money? How do I, hit those quarterly returns for my shareholders? How do you do it? Well, dirt cheap, few cents ingredients, sell for a couple bucks a bottle. It's pure profit. And this system is set up to reward unhealthy foods, unhealthy eating habits. Even a broccoli grower is not going to put an ad on TV for broccoli. You'll buy their competitors' broccoli. Like the system is not set up. And so you're not going to see ads. You're not going to see. So we really have to take our health into our own hands. And make these decisions because the system is not going to reward that kind of behavior.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say maybe long term we don't really see the system changing a whole lot. We might see these little stepping stones, but businesses are businesses, and either way they're going to look out for numero uno. So that's why I always tell people it's important that do your own research, but it's better to stay on that outer aisle because there's nobody that is really benefiting from that. That's why avocados are 3 for $5 or whatever the cost is it's cheaper to get frozen avocado and frozen broccoli in the frozen food section,
right? Yeah, sure.
But it's not the best for you. So now where do you see this vegan thing going? Do you see it progressing and maybe with more people getting the knowledge? Are you seeing maybe going to a restaurant and seeing 60% of the menus vegetarian and 40%? Where do you see it going?
Right. You already say so. Anyone who's involved in this for any time. For a lot of people who are new to this, the progress can seem frustratingly slow. But look, if you've been involved, so for me, it's been decades, and it's like this is just an absolute sea change.
Yeah.
Things are moving incredibly fast. Just look at like the dairy case, right? If I had to get soy milk, it was like in these little aseptic packages. It was brown and chunky and nasty. And like now you go to the dairy section, there's like 50 different milks. 49 of them are made out of plants, right? Some are better than others.
You
but
can
it's
barely
just
find
like
regular milk. It's
and this is like in the middle of nowhere, not like at specialty stores, just like regular grocery stores anywhere in the country now. There's just been a real change. And actually, some of the leaders have been the industries themselves. So, Silk, for example, owned by Dean Foods, a major dairy producer, they're realizing, look, if we can make just as much money or more money with soybeans or almonds, then we can make, then it's just less. They're just not, they don't want to, they just want to make money.
Ways,
and it's just easier, right? Yeah. There's less waste, there's less headache, there's less, so look, in fact, some of the major meat producers like Tyson, like Purdue are getting on the bandwagon, coming out with their own kind of lines of, so they're kind of re-envisioning themselves as protein companies as opposed to meat companies. It's like, again, they don't care. Like, they just want to make money. So they'll give people what they want to buy. And so as you see the shift, it'll get easier and easier. And then that's kind of a positive reinforcement loop. It gets easier, then it's easier to transition to healthier foods. So yeah, I really see have an optimistic view for the future of eating healthy.
It's very exciting, and especially for me, literally 4 years ago I started identifying it. So it seemed like in 4 or 5 years it kind of ramped up. So I felt like as I was transiting, I was like, is everybody doing this for me? Like, this is so strange how it's pretty incredible, and and it's great. I'm very excited about it, and I think in particular, me starting off, it was easy to transition just because I kind of had to for health decisions. But for someone that maybe eats meat every day and they want to start eating plant-based, what do you think is a good, like, kind of starting stone? Waking up in the morning and doing it.
Yeah, no, so there's some wonderful resources out there. There's something called the 21-Day Kickstart Program. To go to 21daykickstart.org. It's a free program run by a medical group called the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. It starts at the first of every year. It's totally free. Bunch of different languages. Hundreds of thousands of people have done it. You do it as kind of a part of a social media group. And it's just you get daily tips and recipes and inspiration. And the hope is, look, give us 3 weeks. Go all in. Just give it a try. Like I used to tell my patients, just as like a free sample, just give it, look, you can eat anything for 3 weeks, right? I mean, you can eat nothing for 3. I mean, so give it a try. And then the hope is by the end of 3 weeks, they will feel so much better. Now, as a doctor, I can do before and after labs, which is even better, but you just feel so much better. So all of a sudden, people's, chronic indigestion goes away. They're sleeping better. They have better energy. Constipation goes away. The periods are better. And then they're just like, wow, they have that internal motivation. They just feel so much better. You couldn't pay them to go back to their old diet. So now it's not just like some doctor wagging their finger saying you got to eat healthier. It's like you have that, even if they do go back to their regular diet, they'll know they have that potential at any time. They could feel that much better if they go back to eating healthier.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true. Yeah. I relate a lot to like drinking beer. Like I'm not a big drinker anymore, but I used to be. And when I stopped drinking it for 3, 4, 5 weeks, on Fridays and Saturday nights, I realized I wasn't really craving it. Like once it's out of your system, you create these new cravings, and now
it's remarkable. So that's why you're giving people just this like, well, let's just give it a try, right? People just can't wrap their head around like, wait, I'm not going to eat pepperoni pizzas, like But then literally once your taste buds change, I mean, you'll be like, wow, that looks good. You'll eat a piece, and you're just like, it's just salty, greasy. It's just like it. I mean, it doesn't. You're like, wait a second, like what is going on? And then it's like, again, best of both worlds. Like good food tastes good, and then you nailed it, right? But you got to give it a try, and you won't know how good you feel unless you give it a try for yourself.
Leap of faith. And last thing I wanted to mention about your book, I thought it was really interesting how you kind of broke it down, the top 15 killers, as you say, for Americans. I know number 1 was heart disease. If you could speak a little bit to that, just maybe if there's someone dealing with a family member that has that, how important the plant-based diet is.
Sure. So the number 1 killer of men and women, heart disease, and it's a disease that can be prevented, arrested, and reversed with a healthy enough plant-based diet. There's only one diet that's ever been proven to reverse heart disease in the majority of patients. That's a plant-based diet. Next time anyone tries to sell you on some new diet, do me a favor, ask them a simple question. Wait a second, has this diet been proven to reverse, heart disease, the number 1 reason me and all my loved ones will die? If the answer is no, why would you even consider it? Like, if that's all a plant-based diet could do, reverse the number 1 killer of men and women, I mean, shouldn't that be the default diet until proven otherwise? And the fact that it can also be so effective in preventing, arresting, reversing other leading killers like type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure would seem to make the case for plant-based eating simply overwhelming.
Wow. Yeah, that's so true. Unbelievable. Well, Doctor, before we wrap up, I do want to give people a chance to follow you on Instagram and your website. Can you tell them your website again?
Absolutely. Go to nutritionfacts.org. It's a free nonprofit science-based public resource. All thanks to my grandma. Check it out.
Oh, that's great. And you have an app too, right? Is that your daily?
Oh yeah, the Dr. Gregor's Daily Dozen free app, iPhone and Android. In fact, everything's free. We got no ads, no corporate sponsorship, strictly not commercial, not selling anything. Just put it up as a public service. It's kind of a labor of love.
Well, Doctor, thank you so much again. And if it's okay with you, I'll be more than happy to post this, and I could share it with you guys, so that we can kind of see, that we're posting the video and all that. And we're going to work on the documentary probably in the next 6 to 8 months. We're going to button a few things up, and really the whole idea behind the documentary is taking my story and a bunch of other stories that we've kind of compiled together. And to your point, no matter what the disease, most diseases could be reversed or even at least fixed by just changing up the diet. So
certainly lifestyle diseases, absolutely. Happy to help out. Looking forward to seeing the video up.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Doctor.
God, I hope you guys enjoyed that episode as much as I loved hanging out with Dr. Gregor for a few minutes. What a cool cat. If you didn't check out the YouTube video, I'll leave the description I'll leave the link in the description for the podcast. But he was on a treadmill the entire time. And, this is a guy that's been eating plant-based forever. So he has plenty of energy, you could tell. So pretty motivational, really cool guy. Hopefully we can sit down with the doctor in person and do another podcast. But that was definitely a lot of fun. So thank you to Dr. Gregor and his team for setting that up and giving me the time. I did want to mention, I talked about it earlier in the podcast, but if you didn't get a chance, definitely be sure to check out the Juice 13. You guys hear me talk about it if you follow me on Instagram, but damn, this is a really cool idea. It's a company I just started using. I'm really loving it. It's actually 13 different nutrients in one little shot. You take the powder, you do one scoop, you throw it in a little jar, you shake it up with some water, some juice, boom. That's it. You got 13 nutrients that your body needs. Ginger, it's got blackberry extract, it's got cranberry extract, it's got 13 vital nutrients. Really cool company. So I'm enjoying that. If you decide to check the thing out, thejuice13.com. And at checkout, use the code THEBERARDO. They're going to hook you up with a discount just for being a listener. So thanks again, guys, for the time. And if you haven't already, write a review. I'd love to hear your feedback. And don't forget to press that subscribe button if you want to hear more. Thanks again for the love, guys. Be safe out there.